Today I am going to teach you 4 important functions in R. These 4 important functions are going to ease out the way you manipulate data objects in R, coming up on the other side. Hey there, Balu here from SP Tech. If you are in this channel for the very first time, subscribe this particular channel and hit on the notification bell to get the future video updates. So let's get into the R Studio and look into those 4 important, most powerful functions in R. So let's get started now. Okay, the first important function you're going to learn in R is called as an apply function. The apply function is actually used to manipulate an object called matrix. We have already seen matrix in our previous session. So if you want to know more about matrix, I'll just give the link above. So you can just click on that particular link and look into the matrix session. So now let us see how to basically make use of an apply function in R. In order to use an apply function, we have to first create a matrix. So let's create a matrix now. So in order to create a matrix, I will use a matrix name. So I'll call it as matrix A. So I'm using the function called matrix. So I'm using the combination function here, and I'm going to give the range of numbers, that is 1 to 9, and I'm going to give 3 rows to that particular matrix. So now I'm going to execute this line of code. So my matrix is created. So let's see and print this particular matrix A. So when I print the matrix A, now you can see that the matrix A has been successfully created. Now what I need to do is, I need to actually find out the sum of the rows and the sum of the columns. So this particular matrix has got 3 rows and 3 columns. Now I want to find out the individual sum of rows and columns. That is where your lapply and apply functions come into picture. So in this case, I am going to make use of a function called apply. So what does this apply function do? This apply function will basically use this matrix as an object, and we can use it to find the sum of rows and the sum of columns. So how do we do that? I will use this function called apply. So the name of the function is apply. Now this apply function will take matrix A as an object. Now I need to specify whether I am going to find the row sum or the column sum. So if I want to find the row sum, I have to specify the argument or the margin argument as 1. And if I want to specify the column, then you have to specify the margin argument as 2. So in this case, I want to find the row sum. So I am going to give 1 as the margin, and I am going to use the function called sum. So when I run this line of code, now you can see that you are getting the output as 12, 15 and 18. So you can find out the actual row sums here. You can see the first row, 1 plus 4 plus 7 will give me 12. Then 2 plus 5 plus 8 will give me 15, and the third row sum will give me 18. Suppose if I want to find the sum of the columns, it is pretty simple. So I'll say apply the name of the object, that is matrix A or mat A. Now I'm going to specify the margin argument as 2, and I am going to use this function called as sum. So when I run this, now you are going to get the column sum, that is 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. Then you are going to get the sum of the second column as 15, and you are getting the sum of the third column as 24. So this is the basic idea of using an apply function. The apply function will help you to manipulate the matrix object. Okay, now what are the other functions we can actually use with apply in combination with apply? One is we can make use of the sum function. You can also make use of a function called as a mean. So you all know what a mean is. Mean is nothing but an average. So what I will do is, I'll take these 2 lines of code and I will just copy it here. And what I am going to do is, I am going to change this sum to mean and see what I am going to get the output as. So the first function is going to be sum. Now the second function is going to be mean. So when I run this piece of code, now you are seeing that the output as 4, 5 and 6. So what is happening now here is, I am finding the average of this particular row. So the average of the first row is actually 4, the average of the second row is 5, and the average of the third row is 6. You can mathematically verify it. The first row is 1 plus 4, 5, 7 plus 5 is 12. So now you can divide that by 3, so you are getting the average as 4. So mean is nothing but your average. Similarly, I want to find the average of column. So you have to find the average of column, means mean of that particular column. So naturally you have to use the margin as 2. So when I run this, so you can find the mean of this particular column. So like this, you can use the sum function and the mean function, and you can apply it on this particular matrix object A, and you can control the column and rows by the margin attribute, which is actually given the value 1 and 2. So it is 1 for row and 2 for columns. Okay, now let's see what would happen if the matrix has got a null value. Because sometimes a matrix could even have a null value. Now the matrix what we have created here, that is mat A, does not have any null values. So if I want to wantonly give a null value, I will actually specify a null value in my matrix. So what I'll do here is, I will say matrix A. So let me put this in the script editor. So I'm going to specify matrix A and the index of that particular matrix A. So 2 comma 2, and I'm going to give it as NA. So NA stands for null. So let me run this. Okay, it has successfully taken it as null. Now I am going to print matrix A. So when I print this particular matrix A, now you can see that the position 2 comma 2, that is intersection of the second row and second column, it has given NA value there. Now when a matrix has got a null value, what happens when I apply a function with sum and mean, or any of those functions, either it could be sum or a mean. So let's try that. Suppose if I say apply, now I'm going to apply the function to find out the sum of rows. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to use this matrix A or mat A object. The margin is going to be 1, and I'm going to apply the function called sum. So when I apply the function called sum and execute this, you can see that I'm getting the output as 12, NA and 18, which means it is not finding the sum of the second row. Why it is not finding the sum of the second row is because that there is a NA value in the second row. So naturally that second row is eliminated. So you are getting the sum of the first row and the third row. So the apply function doesn't actually find the value of sum when there are NA values. Now you have to eliminate this. I mean to say that you want to find out the sum by not considering the NA value. Then what is that you need to do? You have to slightly tweak this particular line of code. So I'm going to use one argument called as na.rm is equal to true. Let us see what is that na.rm is equal to true and see what happens when we put an apply function. So now what I'm going to do is, I will use the same apply function here, and I'm going to supply matrix A object. I'm going to supply the margin, that is 1. That means I'm finding the row sum. I'm using the sum function. Now what I'm going to specify here is, I'll say na.rm is equal to true. That means you are going to remove all the NA values. Now when I execute this line of code, now you can see that it is finding the sum of the second row. So what it is doing is, it is not considering NA here. So the sum of the second row is 2 plus 8. That means there are actually 3 elements. One of the element has a NA value. So it is finding the sum of the elements 2 and 8. So the answer is going to be 10. So like this, I can eliminate null values while actually applying the function called apply. Now we have understood how to make use of an apply function and how you are able to find out the row function, that is the row sum, and you are able to find the column sum, and you can also use the function called sum for finding the sum of the rows and sum of the columns, and you can also use a function called mean to find the average row and the average column. Okay, great. Now what is that we need to do next? Now we have understood the first important, most powerful function in R, that is the apply function. Now we'll go to the next important function in R, which is called as an lapply function. So lapply function is called as list apply function. So we shall see how to work on this particular list apply function now. Okay, the list apply function basically takes a list of items in order to do some manipulation of the data. So it can either take a vector, or it can take a matrix, or it can take the combination of both. Now what I'll do is I'll just create a simple list which consists of vectors. So I will create a vector here, and I will show you how to basically use an lapply function on that. So I'll just create a vector called names. So I have a vector called names. So this vector would have some names here. So let us consider some names like Anil. This is the first name. Then I have Kiran. This is my second name. Then I have Vasu. This is my third name. And Suresh. Now this is my fourth name. Now I have basically created this vector called names. So first let us run this particular vector. Let me display this vector for you. I'll say print names. So now you can see that the vector is displayed. Now I want to convert all this name to uppercase letters. So if I want to convert all these names to uppercase letters, we have to make use of this lapply function. So how do I make use of that lapply function? You have to make use of a specific function called toUpper. So what I will do now is I will say lapply. So lapply is the name of the function. So I will use the vector here, names, and I'm going to use this function called toUpper. So when I use this function called toUpper, and when I run this piece of code, now you can see the output here that a list has been created and all the elements of that particular vector has been converted into uppercase. So that means the output of a lapply function is always an list object. So this is one thing which you need to understand. Okay, now how do I create multiple objects within the list? So I will take one solid example and understand that now. Now I am going to actually create a list of 3 objects. One is a matrix object, and the second one is an vector object, and the third one is an simple variable. So let's see how to create that. So first let me create a matrix object. So I'll call it as mat_b. So mat_b is my matrix. So I'll create a matrix here. So I'm going to use numbers from 1 to 9 within a range. Then I'm going to specify the number of rows is equal to 3. So this is how I create an matrix object called B. Now I'll create an vector called B. So I'll call it as say vect_b. So which will have say numbers from say 10 to 19. So this is a vector called B. Then I'm going to create a variable called C. So I'll call it as variable C, and I'm going to give a value called 10. So now I have 3 objects here. First let us execute this. First let me execute the matrix B. Then let me execute vector B. Then let me execute variable C. So fine, all the 3 objects have been created. Now what do I do next? I am going to now create a list of all these 3 objects. So how do I do that? So I will say list, or I'll probably say my list. So I'll say my list is equal to list of. So I'm going to use matrix B is my first object. Then vector B is my second object, and variable C as my third object. So let me create this particular list now. So the list is successfully created. Let me print this particular list. So I'll say print my list. So when I say print my list, what you can see here is whatever list you are created, it appears here in the console. So you can see that the first object of this particular list is a matrix. The second object of your list is a vector, and the third object of your list is a variable. Okay. Now what I want to do now, I want to find the sum of all these elements in the list using an lapply function. So I will use the lapply function and I am going to supply the list. So the name of the list is mylist, and then I am going to use this function called sum. So when I use this function called sum and execute this, now you can see the output. You're getting the output as 45, 145 and 10. So what does this mean? It means the sum of this first object, that is the list object, is 45. That means when you sum up all these elements of the matrix, you get 45. When you sum all the elements of this particular list, that is your vector, when you sum up all the elements of this vector, you get the output as 45. And when you take the third sum, it is only giving me as 10 because there is only one variable there. So like this, I can make use of the lapply function to actually find the sum of my list elements. Okay, now what if I want to use a customized function? See, so far we have been using functions like sum, we have been using functions like mean. So how about using a custom function? So what is a custom function now? Now I have a list with multiple objects. Now I want to increase the element of my object by 10. For example, if it's a matrix, I want to increase all the elements of matrix by 10. And similarly, if I have a vector, I want to increase all the elements by 10. So that means I have to add numerical 10 to individual elements of my list. Now how do I do that? For that I have to write a custom function. I'll show you how to write a custom function in R. So first I need to have the name of the function. So I'll call the name of the function as, say, magic function. So that's a good valid name. So this magic function is of the type function. So I'll say function of x. X is the parameter what it basically receives. So this function will have a opening brace and a closing brace. It's a body of the function. Then I'll say return. I'm going to return x plus 10. So that means it is going to return the value x plus 10. So let me run this function first. So I'm running this particular function. The function is successfully run. Now I have to implement this magic function on my lapply function, or I have to use this magic function inside my lapply function. So how do I do that? So what I need to do is I have to say lapply. So lapply is the name of the function. Then I am going to use this mylist. Then I am going to use the name of the function called magic function. So now what I am trying to do here is I am applying this magic function on my mylist, which is nothing but which has got one matrix as an object and a vector as an object and one variable as an object. Now when I run this piece of code, you see what output I am getting. I am getting the output as 11, 14 and 17. So all the elements of the matrix have been added by 10. So in order to make the output much clear, so what we will do is we will just print this mylist once. So I am printing the mylist once. So this is the mylist. In the mylist you can see 1, 4, 7, 2, 5, 8, 3 and 6, 9, and you observe this, it has added by 10. 11, 14, 17, 12, 15, 18, 13, 16 and 19. Similarly here it has added 10 to all the elements of the vector. So that means this particular function is perfectly working fine. So that means you can make use of the customized function inside your lapply function. So you can use whatever logic you want to apply and you can use it inside your lapply function. Okay, now we will look into the next important function in R, which is called as sapply. See, what is the major difference between lapply function and a sapply function? lapply function will give me the output in the form of a list, whereas an sapply function will give me the output in the form of an vector. So I will just copy a line of code here and demonstrate the difference between these two. So now I have created one vector here called as A and one vector here called as B, and I am applying these two vectors for an lapply function. Let us see what output I am going to get. So now you can see that I am getting the output as 6 and 26, which means I have added the vectors, that is A and B, and the sum of those vectors A and B is 6 and 26. But you can see the output is in the form of a list object. But the same thing if I use an sapply function, I am not changing anything here. I am just replacing lapply with the sapply in the line number 42. When I run this, you can see the output is in the form of a vector. It is not in the form of a list object. So this is the major difference between an sapply function and an lapply function. Okay, next important function in R is tapply function. So what is a tapply function? The tapply function basically works on a data set. So what is a data set? Data set is nothing but the huge collection of data. There are certain built-in data sets in R, and one such data set is called as an iris data set. So first let me show you what is this iris data set all about. So what I am doing here is I am going to give a function called head, and I am going to use this data set called iris. So when I run this, you can see that the data set is already available and it is preloaded in R, and you are getting the output. This is a data set, basically is the data set of a flower, which consists of different species. So you have a sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width, and the species. So this is a species called setosa, and there are different types of species as well. So if you want to look at the complete data set, because it is actually showing me 6 rows here, if you want to know the complete data set, use this function called view. Use a function called view and use this data set called iris. So when I run this, you can see that you are getting the grid view here. So you can see sepal length, sepal width, petal width, and species. So if these are the values of different length and width of sepals and petals, the species is calculated as setosa. Like this, there are multiple species which are available here. We need to identify what are the different types of species which are actually available in my data set. In order to do that, we use one function called unique. So what I'll do is I'll say unique. I'll use this function called unique, and I'm going to use this particular iris data set, and I'm going to find out how many types of species are there. So you can see that the data set is iris and the column name is species. So when you run this, so you can see that there are 3 types of species basically. One is setosa, and the second one is versicolor, and the third one is virginitia. So setosa, versicolor, and virginitia are the unique type of species which are available. Now I want to make some inference out of it. What inference I want to make out of it is, I want to find out for this particular species setosa, what is the maximum sepal length, and for this particular species called versicolor, what is the maximum sepal length. So in order to do that, I am going to make use of a tapply function. So let me clear off this dirt from the console. So I am using iris $sepal.length. So this is the column which I am actually using, and I am using the species column. That means I am classifying that under the species column. So when I run this, you can see that the maximum value of setosa for sepal length is 5.8. The maximum value for sepal length for versicolor is 7.0, and the maximum value for sepal length for virginitia is 7.9. So you can use any type of function here. So you can also use minimum if you want. So I can, instead of max, I can make use of the minimum function. So it will give me the minimum value, and I can also make use of the mean function. So I can also make use of the mean function. So it will give me the mean value. So like this, I can make use of the tapply functions for data sets. So in today's session, you basically learned how to use 4 powerful functions in R. One is the apply function. The second one is called as the lapply function. The third one is called the sapply function, and the last one is called as the tapply function. Thank you so much for watching this particular session. If you really like this particular session, give me a thumbs up on this, and I will see you in my next session. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.